The words slipped from Megan Adams's lips before she could stop them. They hung in the humid Miami air between her and the handsome stranger, whose dark brown eyes widened at her sudden boldness. "Kiss me like you mean it," she repeated, her voice steadier than she felt, one hand unconsciously moving to rest on her barely visible baby bump. The noisy Brickell intersection faded around them, the morning commuters blurring into the background. 20 minutes earlier, Megan had been rushing toward her first day at Catalyst Digital, Miami's fastest-growing tech marketing agency. Her portfolio clutched tightly against her chest, and the tiny life growing within her. She'd rehearsed her introduction to the notoriously demanding CEO, Kyle Morgan. After years of building her freelance business, this position as head of brand strategy represented everything she'd worked toward: stability, recognition, and the chance to finally prove herself in an industry that had repeatedly underestimated her. Then juice had spilled down her carefully selected coral dress when someone bumped into her. Not just any juice, thick, pulpy mango smoothie from the corner cafe whose blend she'd hoped would calm her first-day nerves and settle her morning sickness. Now, as she frantically dabbed at the spreading stain with a handful of napkins, tears of frustration threatened to ruin her meticulously applied makeup. "Here," a deep voice had said, offering a pristine white handkerchief. "Club soda and a touch of salt will take that right out." When Megan looked up, time seemed to slow. The stranger wore no tie, his collar open at the neck, revealing a hint of sun-bronzed skin. His dark hair was slightly windswept, and stubble emphasized a jawline that belonged on a billboard. But it was his eyes, somehow both intense and kind, that made her forget the disaster unfolding on her dress. "I'm already late," she'd explained, accepting his handkerchief nonetheless. First day, new job, important meeting. And now, she gestured helplessly at the stain. "First days are overrated," he'd replied with a smile that created a dimple in his right cheek. "I skipped mine entirely." Despite everything, Megan laughed. "Must be nice having that kind of freedom." "Freedom comes with its own complications," he'd said cryptically before guiding her toward a nearby boutique. "Come on. 10 minutes, and you'll be presentable again. I promise." She should have refused, should have continued her frantic journey toward Catalyst Digital's modern building. Yet something about this stranger, his quiet confidence perhaps, or the way he seemed genuinely concerned about her predicament, made Megan follow him. Inside the boutique, he'd navigated directly to women's professional wear, selecting a dress in almost the exact shade of coral as her ruined one. "This should work," he'd said, handing it to her without checking the price tag in a way that suggested money wasn't a concern. When she'd emerged from the fitting room, transformed, he'd smiled approvingly. "Perfect," he'd said, and the warmth in his voice made something flutter in her chest, separate from the baby's movements she'd only recently begun to feel. "What's this important meeting about anyway?" "I'm meeting my new boss, supposedly some brilliant but intimidating entrepreneur who built a tech empire from nothing." She adjusted the collar of her new dress. "People say he's impossible to please." "Sounds like a real tyrant," he'd replied, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Maybe you should reconsider." "Not a chance. I've worked too hard to get here." Megan had checked her watch and gasped. "I really have to go? Thank you so much for..." She gestured at the dress, suddenly realizing she had no way to repay this unexpected kindness. "No need to thank me," he'd said, walking her back outside. "Just promise you'll knock him dead today." Perhaps it was his quiet confidence or the lingering adrenaline from her morning crisis. But as they'd reached the crosswalk, Megan felt a surge of boldness she hadn't experienced since before her pregnancy test had shown positive. This handsome stranger, this fleeting connection amid the city's chaos, represented everything she wasn't: spontaneous, carefree, unbound by the need to constantly prove herself. And so the words had tumbled out, surprising them both. "Kiss me like you mean it." Now, watching his shocked expression transform into something unreadable, Megan instantly regretted her impulsiveness. "I'm sorry, that was completely inappropriate. I don't know what came over me. It's just been a crazy morning, and you've been so kind." And his laugh interrupted her rambling apology. You certainly don't do things halfway, do you? Heat flooded her cheeks. Usually I'm much more professional, I swear. I've just never been good at accepting help without giving something in return. And I thought, well, I don't know what I thought. The crosswalk signal changed and the crowd surged forward, but they remained still, an island in the human current. His expression softened as he studied her face. Tell you what, he said finally. Let's make a deal. If you still want that kiss after your first day, find me at the Azure Rooftop Bar at 7 tonight. Before Megan could respond, he stepped back with a smile that promised complications. Good luck with the tyrant boss, he called over his shoulder as he merged into the crowd, leaving her breathless and bewildered on the corner. 15 minutes later, Megan stood in the impressive lobby of Catalyst Digital, her thoughts still tangled around the stranger and her moment of madness. The receptionist's voice jolted her back to reality. Ms. Adams, they're waiting for you in the conference room. Megan swallowed hard, straightening her new dress and gathering her portfolio. Thank you. I'm ready. The executive floor buzzed with activity as the receptionist led her through a maze of glass-walled offices. Conversations paused as she passed, curious gazes following her progress. By the time they reached the conference room door, Megan's momentary confidence had been replaced by the familiar weight of anxiety. Just breathe, she whispered to herself, then stepped into the room where 6 impeccably dressed executives sat around a polished table. Their expressions ranged from polite interest to barely concealed impatience. Miss Adams, welcome to Catalyst, said an elegant woman with sleek black hair. I'm Carmen Silva, Chief Operating Officer. Please have a seat. We were just discussing the quarterly projections. Megan settled into the indicated chair, noting the empty seat at the head of the table. Thank you for the opportunity, Miss Silva. I apologize for my tardiness. There was an incident with a smoothie. Carmen's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. Carl texted that you might be slightly delayed. No matter. He's running late himself, which is unusual. She glanced toward the door. He should be joining us momentarily. The meeting proceeded with introductions and preliminary discussions of Catalyst's current projects. Megan contributed where appropriate, grateful that her professional knowledge remained intact despite the morning's chaos. Still, she couldn't help glancing repeatedly at the door, her stomach tightening with each passing minute. First impressions mattered, and being late to meet the CEO, regardless of the circumstances, wasn't the start she'd hoped for. When the door finally opened, Megan rose with the others, portfolio ready, professional smile in place. Then her carefully constructed composure shattered completely. Standing in the doorway, now wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit and crisp white shirt, was the stranger from the crosswalk, his eyes locked with hers across the conference room, that same dimpled smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Good morning, everyone, he said, his gaze never leaving Megan's face. I see you've all met our new head of brand strategy. Carmen nodded. Yes, Kyle? Ms. Adams was just about to share some of her portfolio concepts. Kyle Morgan, Billionaire CEO, supposed tyrant, and the man she'd just propositioned at a crosswalk, slid into the chair at the head of the table. Excellent, he said, leaning forward with undisguised interest. I'm particularly eager to see what Miss Adams brings to the table. I have a feeling she's full of surprises. As the blood drained from her face, Megan realized with perfect clarity that her career at Catalyst Digital had just begun in the most catastrophically unprofessional way possible, by accidentally propositioning her new boss. The 3 hours that followed ranked among the most excruciating of Megan's professional life. She managed to present her portfolio with remarkable composure given the circumstances, her voice steady even as her mind replayed that mortifying moment at the crosswalk on an endless loop. Through it all, Kyle Morgan remained a consummate professional, asking insightful questions about her brand philosophy and previous work, without the slightest hint that anything unusual had transpired between them. Only the occasional glint in his eyes, a flash of something that might have been amusement or challenge, betrayed any awareness of their earlier encounter. By the time the meeting concluded, Megan had almost convinced herself that he intended to pretend it never happened. A mercy, perhaps, or simply good business sense. Impressive work, everyone. Kyle said, rising from his chair. Miss Adams, if you have a moment, I'd like to discuss your onboarding schedule. The other executives filed out, leaving Megan alone with the man she'd brazenly asked to kiss her mere hours ago. The conference room suddenly felt both too large and insufferably small. Mr. Morgan, she began once the door closed. About this morning. Kyle, he corrected, loosening his tie with one finger. And before you continue, I should mention that I don't discuss personal matters in the office. His expression remained unreadable. Carmen will show you to your department. The team's eager to meet you. With that dismissal still hanging in the air, he strode from the room, leaving Megan to wonder if she'd imagined the brief pressure of his hand on her shoulder as he passed. Her new office, a corner space with windows overlooking Biscayne Bay, should have thrilled her. Instead, as Carmen completed the tour and left her to settle in, Megan sank into her ergonomic chair and covered her face with her hands. Knock, knock, came a cheerful voice from the doorway. Welcome wagon delivery. Megan looked up to find a woman approximately her age, balancing 2 coffee cups and a pastry bag. Her dark, curly hair was pulled into a high ponytail, and her warm brown face wore an expression of friendly curiosity. I'm Jasmine Torres, Digital Content Director and your new office neighbor, she said, placing one of the coffees on Megan's desk. Fair warning, I brought bribery caffeine because I need dirt on your meeting with the big boss. Despite everything, Megan found herself laughing. That obvious, huh? Jasmine perched on the edge of the desk. Honey, the entire strategy department has been taking bets on whether you'd survive the Morgan Gauntlet. Most newcomers leave their first encounter looking shell-shocked, but you're remarkably intact. Appearances can be deceiving, Megan murmured, accepting the coffee gratefully. Decaf, thankfully. Spill, Jasmine commanded, breaking a guava pastelito in half and offering the larger portion. What's he like one-on-one? Still doing that intimidating silent stare thing? Megan hesitated, weighing her response. He wasn't what I expected, she admitted finally. Different from the reputation. Jasmine's eyebrows shot up. Interesting. Care to elaborate? Not particularly. Megan sipped her coffee, hoping to change the subject. Tell me about the team instead. The woman studied her thoughtfully before acquiescing. Fair enough. You'll meet everyone officially this afternoon, but the Cliff Notes version, talented group, slightly overworked, desperately in need of fresh leadership. She gestured toward Megan with her coffee cup. That's where you come in. The last head of brand strategy was more interested in pleasing Morgan than pushing boundaries. And that didn't work. Got him a corner office in our Austin branch, actually, Jasmine admitted with a grimace. But the department suffered. We need someone who stands their ground, not another yes man. Megan thought of the handkerchief, the boutique, the unexpected kindness from a man reputed to be ruthlessly demanding. He doesn't strike me as someone who surrounds himself with sycophants. That's just it. Jasmine leaned closer, lowering her voice. Nobody really knows him. 6 years building this company from nothing, featured in every tech magazine worth reading, and still somehow manages to keep his personal life completely private. She brushed pastry crumbs from her skirt. The official story is classic rags to riches. Brilliant college dropout builds revolutionary analytics platform, secures venture capital, transforms digital marketing landscape. And the unofficial story? Jasmine grinned. That's where it gets interesting. Rumors range from secretly wealthy family to former government consultant. The only facts anyone's confirmed are that he grew up in Colorado, never married, and donates ridiculous amounts to STEM education programs for underprivileged kids. Before Megan could probe further, her phone chimed with a calendar notification. Department meeting in 10 minutes, she read aloud. Perfect timing, Jasmine said, hopping off the desk. Ready to meet your team? The afternoon passed in a whirlwind of introductions, project briefings, and bureaucratic necessities. By 5 o'clock, Megan had met her entire 12-person team, reviewed 4 major campaigns in development, and signed enough paperwork to give her a hand cramp. Kyle Morgan made no further appearances, though his presence loomed over every conversation. She was just packing up her things when Carmen appeared at her door. Kyle asked me to give you this, the older woman said, handing over a sleek folder embossed with the company logo. He wants your input on the Luminera Resort pitch by tomorrow morning. Megan accepted the folder, noting its substantial weight. Of course, I'll review it tonight. Carmen lingered, her professional demeanor softening slightly. It's unusual, you know. What is? Giving a new hire direct input on our biggest prospective client. She studied Megan with newfound interest. He must see something special in your work. After Carmen departed, Megan opened the folder to find not only the Luminera Resort materials, but also a handwritten note on Catalyst letterhead. The offer still stands. 7 p.m. K. Her pulse quickened as she recalled his parting words at the crosswalk. If you still want that kiss after your first day, find me at the Azure Rooftop Bar at 7 tonight. The sensible choice was obvious. Go home, review the Luminera pitch, establish professional boundaries from the start. Office romances rarely ended well, and this particular complication could jeopardize the career she'd worked so hard to build, especially now with a baby on the way. Yet as Megan stared at the bold, confident handwriting, she couldn't ignore the persistent tug of curiosity. What kind of CEO bought strange women new dresses and offered them handkerchiefs? What was behind that carefully maintained public persona? And why, despite every professional instinct warning against it, did she still want to discover how Kyle Morgan might kiss if he truly meant it? At 6:55 p.m., Megan stepped off the elevator onto Azure's rooftop level. Her decision made, she'd changed into a simple navy dress she kept in her office for after-work events, applied fresh lipstick, and liberated her long dark hair from its professional bun. The maitre d' escorted her past candlelit tables to a secluded corner where Kyle stood at the balcony rail, silhouetted against Miami's glittering skyline. He turned at her approach, his expression warming as he took in her appearance. You came. Apparently, I make questionable decisions with remarkable consistency, Megan replied, joining him at the rail. Though in my defense, when I propositioned you this morning, I didn't know you were my boss. Would it have mattered? The directness of his question caught her off guard. Megan considered this. Probably. I tend to keep my professional and personal lives strictly separated. And now I'm breaking my own rules, clearly. She gestured toward the skyline. Nice view. Do you bring all your new employees here? Just the ones who asked me to kiss them before knowing my name. The amusement in his voice took any sting from the words. I ordered champagne. Well, sparkling cider for you, since I noticed you ordered decaf this morning. I hope that's acceptable. Megan felt her cheeks warm. Of course he'd noticed. Celebration seems premature, given the potential HR nightmare we're creating, she observed dryly. Kyle's laugh was unexpectedly rich. I like you, Megan Adams. That's rare enough to merit celebration. A server appeared with champagne for him and sparkling cider for her, along with 2 flutes. Once they were alone again, Kyle raised his glass. To breaking rules, occasionally and selectively. Megan clinked her glass against his. To professional boundaries and the complex ethics of office romances. Always so careful, he murmured, his eyes never leaving hers as they both drank. I'm curious, what made you say those words this morning? You don't strike me as impulsive. The cider's effervescence matched the strange lightness in her chest. I'm not usually, but there was something about that moment. She paused, searching for the right words. For years, I've calculated every career move, every professional risk. This morning, when you helped me, a stranger, without expecting anything in return, it reminded me that not everything needs to be a transaction. So you decided to proposition me? I decided to do something completely uncharacteristic, Megan corrected. Something with no strategic value or professional calculation. Just pure impulse. Kyle studied her for a long moment. And now that you know who I am, now I know it was a terrible idea. She set her glass down decisively. Mr. Morgan, Kyle, I value this opportunity at Catalyst Digital too much to complicate it. What I did this morning was inappropriate, regardless of the circumstances. I see. His expression revealed nothing as he moved slightly closer. And if I told you I haven't stopped thinking about your proposition all day, that I found your boldness refreshing in a world where people primarily want things from me. Megan swallowed hard. I'd say that's precisely why we should keep our relationship strictly professional. Always so careful, Kyle repeated softly. His fingers brushed hers on the railing, the contact sending an electric current up her arm. What if, just once, we weren't? The cider, the city lights, the dangerous proximity, everything conspired against Megan's better judgment. As Kyle leaned incrementally closer, she found herself unable to step away. This is a mistake, she whispered, even as her eyes dropped to his lips. Probably, he agreed, his voice equally low. But sometimes the best decisions look like mistakes at first glance. His hand came up to cup her cheek, and Megan knew with perfect clarity that whatever happened next would irreversibly alter the path she'd so carefully charted for herself and her growing family. Their lips never met. Just as Kyle leaned forward, his phone erupted with an insistent ringtone. His expression shifted instantly from intimate to professional as he checked the screen. I need to take this, he said, stepping back. Excuse me. The interruption broke whatever spell had momentarily clouded Megan's judgment. As Kyle moved away to answer his call, she pressed cool fingers to her flushed cheeks, silently berating herself for nearly crossing a line she'd promised herself to respect. He returned minutes later, his earlier warmth replaced by apologetic professionalism. I'm sorry, but I need to handle an urgent situation with our San Francisco office, he explained, reaching for his jacket. Rain check. The disappointment that flashed through her surprised Megan with its intensity. Actually, this interruption is probably for the best, she said, gathering her purse. We both know this would be complicated. Kyle paused, his gaze searching her face. Complicated doesn't always mean wrong, Megan. In this case, I think it does, she replied softly. I've worked too hard to be taken seriously in this industry. The last thing I need is rumors that I slept my way into a director position, especially while pregnant. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Is that what you think would happen? It doesn't matter what I think. Perception creates reality in corporate environments, and you know it. Megan straightened her shoulders. I'll have my notes on the Billionaire pitch to you first thing tomorrow. Before he could respond, she turned and walked toward the elevator, feeling his eyes on her back with every step. Only when the doors closed between them did she release the breath she'd been holding. The following week established a rhythm that was equal parts challenging and exhilarating. By day, Megan threw herself into revitalizing Catalyst's brand strategy department, implementing new workflows and encouraging her team to push boundaries they'd previously avoided. By night, she worked relentlessly on the Billionaire Resort campaign while managing her prenatal appointments, determined to prove her value through results rather than personal connections. Kyle maintained a scrupulously professional distance, their interactions limited to formal meetings where others were always present. If their colleagues noticed any tension, they attributed it to the high-stakes Billionaire pitch, which had become Catalyst's top priority. The client's arriving tomorrow, Jasmine informed Megan as they reviewed presentation materials late Wednesday evening. Word is they've already turned down proposals from 4 top agencies. Megan nodded, making a final adjustment to the mock-up displayed on her tablet. Then we'll just have to wow them with something those agencies couldn't offer. Confidence. I like it, Jasmine said with a grin. Though between us, Morgan has been unusually hands-on with this one. He typically leaves brand strategy to the department. He's the CEO. Everything ultimately requires his approval. True, but he's never attended every single planning meeting before. Jasmine gave her a sidelong glance. You must have made quite an impression. Before Megan could formulate a suitably neutral response, Carmen appeared in the doorway. Megan, do you have a moment? Kyle would like to speak with you before tomorrow's presentation. Jasmine raised her eyebrows meaningfully as Megan gathered her materials. Good luck, she whispered. Remember, eye contact and no backing down. That's how you handle the big boss. Megan found Kyle in his corner office, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as he studied figures on multiple screens. The setting sun cast amber light across the space, softening the room's otherwise stark modernity. He looked up when she entered, fatigue evident in the lines around his eyes. You wanted to see me? She asked, remaining near the door. Come in, please. Close the door. He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. How confident are you about tomorrow's presentation? Megan sat, placing her tablet on his desk. Very. The team's done exceptional work, and the concept addresses Luminera's specific concerns while differentiating them in the luxury eco-resort market. Kyle nodded, his expression betraying nothing. Luminera's CEO, Victoria Carter, is notoriously difficult to impress. She's bringing her business partner, Jeremy Webb, who's been instrumental in their expansion strategy. I've done my research, Megan assured him. Webb has a background in sustainable architecture and has been pushing for carbon-neutral initiatives across their properties. We've incorporated that into our strategy. Good. Kyle leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. There's something else you should know about Carter and Webb. The serious tone in his voice made Megan sit straighter. What is it? Victoria and I have history. He delivered this information with careful neutrality. We were in a serious relationship about 4 years ago. The relationship ended poorly. Megan absorbed this unexpected revelation. I see. Will that affect our chances? It shouldn't. Victoria values results over personal matters. Kyle's fingers tapped a restless rhythm on his desk. However, she may be less objective than usual. Why tell me this now? The presentation is hours away. Kyle's gaze held her steadily. Because I need you to lead it without me. What? Megan couldn't hide her surprise. But you've been involved in every aspect of planning. The client will expect you to be there. I've been called to an emergency board meeting in Seattle. I'm flying out within the hour. He pushed a folder across the desk toward her. Everything you need to know about Luminera's financials and expansion goals is in here. You're more than capable, Megan. I wouldn't entrust this to you otherwise. The vote of confidence both pleased and unsettled her. You realize this puts enormous pressure on my first major presentation as head of brand strategy? I do. His expression softened marginally, and I wouldn't ask if there were any alternative. The truth is, your concept is stronger than anything we've previously presented to Luminera. Your team respects you, and you understand the client's needs better than anyone else in the department. Megan considered this, weighing the risk against the opportunity. All right, she said finally. I'll handle it. Relief flickered across his face. Thank you. Carmen will attend for operational details, but brand strategy direction is entirely your domain. As Megan rose to leave, Kyle added, about the other night. It's forgotten, she interrupted quickly. Something like disappointment crossed his features. Of course, professional boundaries. Back in her office, Megan worked well past midnight, familiarizing herself with every detail in Kyle's folder. By the time she finally left the building, Miami's streets had quieted and her confidence in tomorrow's presentation had solidified into steely determination. Morning arrived with a text from Kyle. Trust your instincts. The Luminera account is yours to win. The presentation room buzzed with nervous energy as Megan briefed her team one final time. Remember, we're offering them more than a brand strategy. We're providing a vision for their future, she emphasized, straightening her emerald green blazer. At 4 months pregnant, her bump was becoming more visible, though her professional attire concealed it well. When Carmen escorted Victoria Carter and Jeremy Webb into the room precisely at 10 o'clock, Megan stepped forward with practiced poise. Victoria Carter, a striking woman in her early 40s with sharp features and designer glasses, assessed her with obvious skepticism. Ms. Adams, she said, accepting her handshake. I was expecting Kyle Morgan. Mr. Morgan sends his apologies. He was called to Seattle on urgent business, Megan replied smoothly. I'm the head of brand strategy overseeing your account, and I assure you this presentation has his complete confidence. Victoria's expression remained doubtful, but she nodded curtly before introducing her business partner. Jeremy Webb was a tall man with graying temples and an easy smile. His handshake was warm. Pleasure to meet you, Ms. Adams. We're looking forward to seeing what Catalyst has prepared. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. How interesting. Kyle usually handles premium accounts personally. You must be very special. The subtle emphasis wasn't lost on Megan. I simply have the expertise Luminera Resorts requires. she responded evenly. Shall we begin? For the next hour, Megan guided them through Catalyst's comprehensive strategy, from digital presence to experiential marketing that emphasized Luminera's commitment to environmental sustainability. Despite Victoria's occasional cutting remarks and Jeremy's thoughtful but challenging questions, Megan maintained her composure, addressing objections with data-driven responses and genuine passion for the concept. When she concluded, the room fell silent. Victoria Carter studied the projections one last time before clearing her throat. Impressive work, Miss Adams. You've clearly done your homework on our market position. Relief washed through her. Thank you, Ms. Carter. However, Victoria continued, we'll need time to consider all our options. We'll contact you with our decision by week's end. As the meeting disbanded, Victoria lingered, waiting until they were alone before approaching Megan. A word of advice, she said, her voice deceptively pleasant. Kyle Morgan has a pattern of elevating women professionally while pursuing them personally. When the inevitable crash occurs, guess which part of the relationship survives? Megan kept her expression neutral. I'm not sure what you're implying, Miss Carter, but my relationship with Mr. Morgan is strictly professional. Victoria's laugh held no warmth. That's what I thought too, until I discovered he was more interested in my resort chain's expansion plans than in me. She adjusted her designer bag. Just be careful. Kyle's charm is as calculated as everything else about him. The accusation lingered in Megan's mind long after Victoria departed, though she tried to dismiss it as the bitterness of a former relationship. Still, Victoria's warning had touched on her own unacknowledged concerns about Kyle's interest in her. By evening, exhaustion had replaced the adrenaline of the presentation. Megan was packing up to leave when Carmen appeared at her door. Victoria Carter just called, she announced without preamble. They want a second presentation tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? Megan echoed in disbelief. That's highly unusual. Apparently, Jeremy had some concerns about the sustainability metrics. Victoria wants more concrete projections before making her decision. Carmen looked apologetic. Kyle's still in Seattle, so you'll need to handle this follow-up as well. After Carmen left, Megan called her team together for an emergency session. Hours passed as they refined projections and strengthened their environmental initiatives. By midnight, they had a compelling addendum to their original presentation. Go home, everyone, Megan instructed her exhausted team. I'll make the final revisions and see you in the morning. Jasmine lingered after the others departed. Something feels off about this, she said, perching on the edge of Megan's desk. We've never had a client request a next-day follow-up before. The Carters are thorough, Megan replied, though her own misgivings had been growing throughout the evening. Maybe. Jasmine looked unconvinced. Or maybe Victoria Carter has personal reasons for making this difficult. Megan glanced up sharply. What do you know? Jasmine hesitated before answering. Office rumors mostly. Victoria and Kyle were in a serious relationship until she allegedly discovered he'd initiated it specifically to gain access to her resort chain. She shrugged apologetically. Probably gossip, but it aligns with what Victoria implied today, Megan finished quietly. Left alone in her office, Megan stared at the presentation on her screen, unable to focus. Had Kyle manipulated her from the beginning? Their meeting at the crosswalk, had it truly been coincidence? Or had he orchestrated even that, recognizing an opportunity to charm his way into her confidence before the critical Luminera pitch? The thought made her stomach twist with a combination of anger and embarrassment. If Victoria's insinuations were true, Kyle Morgan was not the man Megan had believed him to be. Her phone chimed with an incoming text message from an unknown number. Be careful with Morgan. Check the original Luminera proposal from 8 months ago. File room, cabinet 12, drawer 2. A friend. Curiosity overcame caution. The executive floor was deserted as Megan made her way to the file room, using her access card to enter the dimly lit space. Cabinet 12 yielded a thick folder labeled Luminera Resorts, Initial Approach. What she found inside stole the breath from her lungs. The original proposal, dated 8 months earlier, contained a strategy remarkably similar to her own innovative concept, including the sustainability angle she'd believed was her unique contribution. More damning were the handwritten notes in what she now recognized as Kyle's distinctive script, outlining a plan to approach Luminera again after their initial rejection. One note in particular caught her eye. Find fresh perspective to present. VC responds to new voices. The implications were unmistakable. Kyle hadn't valued her creativity or insight. He needed a fresh face to sell Luminera on ideas they'd previously rejected. Their encounter at the crosswalk, his interest in her work, perhaps even his romantic overtures, all potentially calculated moves in a business strategy. As the pieces fell into place, Megan felt a cold fury replace her earlier confusion. Kyle Morgan had played her expertly, using her ambition and attraction to serve his own ends. Tomorrow's presentation wouldn't just determine Luminera Resort's business. It would reveal whether she would allow herself to be a pawn in Kyle's game. By dawn, Megan had made her decision. When her phone rang shortly after 6 a.m., she wasn't surprised to see Kyle's name on the screen. "I just landed," he said without preamble. "Carmen told me about the second presentation. I'm heading straight to the office to join you." "That won't be necessary," Megan replied, her voice carefully controlled. "I've got everything under control." A pause. "Megan, is everything all right?" "Perfectly." She took a steadying breath. "I found the original Luminera proposal, Kyle. The one from 8 months ago." The silence that followed told her everything she needed to know. "We'll discuss this after the presentation," he said finally, his tone unreadable. "Don't do anything rash." "I'm doing exactly what you hired me to do," Megan answered, presenting a compelling strategy to an important client. As she ended the call, Megan checked her reflection in her office window. The woman who gazed back at her looked different somehow, stronger perhaps, or simply wiser. Whatever happened next, she would face it on her own terms, not as Kyle Morgan's carefully selected pawn. Kyle arrived at Catalyst Digital 20 minutes before the scheduled presentation, his usual immaculate appearance slightly disheveled from the overnight flight. He found Megan in the conference room, calmly arranging presentation materials while her team made final adjustments to the visual displays. "We need to talk," he said quietly, drawing her aside. Megan met his gaze with cool professionalism. "The Carters will be here in 15 minutes. Whatever you have to say can wait." "It can't." His voice held an urgency she hadn't heard before. "The file you found, it's not what you think." "Really?" Megan arched an eyebrow. "Because it looks exactly like you recycled a rejected proposal and used me as a fresh face to sell it." Kyle ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. "That's not." He stopped, seemingly reconsidering his words. "Yes, parts of the strategy are similar, but not for the reasons you're assuming." Before she could respond, Carmen appeared at the door. "The Carters are early. They're heading up now." "Perfect timing," Megan murmured to Kyle. "Looks like your explanation will have to wait." The tension in the room was palpable when Victoria and Jeremy entered. Victoria seemed surprised to see Kyle, while Jeremy appeared genuinely pleased. "Kyle," Victoria said, her tone falsely sweet. "I thought you were in Seattle." "I returned this morning," he replied evenly. "I wouldn't miss this presentation." Victoria looked between them with shrewd eyes before turning to Megan. "Ms. Adams, I understand you have additional sustainability projections for us." "Yes, Ms. Carter." Megan gestured toward the seats. "If everyone's ready, we can begin." As the lights dimmed for the presentation, Megan felt a curious sense of calm descend. The betrayal she'd felt upon discovering the file had crystallized into something harder overnight: determination. Whatever game Kyle was playing, she would not be its unwitting piece. "Before I share our enhanced sustainability metrics," she began, "I'd like to address something important." She met Victoria's gaze directly. "In preparing for today, I discovered that Catalyst Digital presented a similar proposal to Luminera Resorts 8 months ago." The room went utterly still. From the corner of her eye, Megan saw Kyle stiffen, while Victoria leaned forward with barely concealed satisfaction. "I believe in transparency," Megan continued steadily. "And I believe you deserve to know that while the core strategy remains similar, my team has substantially evolved and strengthened the approach based on Luminera's changing market position and the growing demand for authentic sustainability in luxury ecotourism." Victoria's expression remained unreadable. Go on. For the next 40 minutes, Megan guided the room through a presentation that differed significantly from what they had prepared the previous day. Instead of merely enhancing the original proposal, she had spent the night completely reimagining it, leveraging her team's strengths while addressing the fundamental weaknesses that had likely led to the proposal's initial rejection. When she concluded, even Victoria looked begrudgingly impressed. Jeremy Webb cleared his throat. Miss Adams, when you mentioned discovering our previous interaction with Catalyst, I expected excuses. Instead, you've shown remarkable adaptability. He glanced at Kyle, a quality not everyone possesses. The credit belongs to Ms. Adams and her team, Kyle said, surprising Megan with his sincerity. Their vision for Luminera exceeds anything we've previously conceived. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. I'd like to discuss specifics with Miss Adams alone, if possible. The request raised eyebrows around the room, but Kyle agreed immediately. Of course, we'll give you the space you need. As the others filed out, Kyle paused beside Megan's chair. Trust yourself, he murmured so quietly only she could hear. You've got this. Alone with Victoria and Jeremy, Megan maintained her professional composure despite her racing thoughts. For 30 minutes, they delved into budget allocations, implementation timelines, and measurement metrics. Their questions were pointed but fair, and Megan found herself genuinely enjoying the challenge they presented. One last thing, Miss Adams, Victoria said as their discussion concluded. I believe Kyle Morgan is using you to secure our business. Is there any truth to that concern? The directness of the question caught Megan off guard, but Jeremy's gentle expression told her to answer honestly. Ms. Carter, I can only speak to my own experiences and intentions. I believe in the strategy I've presented today, regardless of any personal dynamics within Catalyst Digital. Victoria studied her for a long moment before a genuine smile crossed her features. Well answered. Too many people in this business forget that integrity matters. Rising from her seat, she extended her hand. Luminera Resorts would be pleased to work with Catalyst Digital, with you as our primary contact. Joy surged through Megan as she accepted the handshake. Thank you, Ms. Carter. We won't disappoint you. I'm counting on that, Victoria replied. My assistant will contact you to formalize the details. Jeremy shook her hand as well, his grip warm. You're going to do great things, Megan. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. When they left the conference room, Megan remained seated, allowing herself a moment to absorb what had just happened. She had secured the Luminera account, her first major win as head of brand strategy, despite the complications Kyle's actions had created. The door opened again, and Victoria stepped back inside, her expression considerably less friendly than it had been moments ago. Congratulations, she said, the word holding no warmth. You managed to impress both of us, which isn't easy. Thank you, Megan replied cautiously. Victoria moved closer, elegant fingers trailing along the conference table's polished surface. I wonder if you understand what you're getting into with Kyle Morgan. Ms. Carter, he'll charm you. Victoria continued as if Megan hadn't spoken. Make you feel special, valued for your mind rather than just your appearance. That's his particular talent, seeing what people need and becoming exactly that. Her perfectly manicured hand stilled. Until he gets what he wants. Megan met her gaze steadily. With all due respect, your past with Kyle has nothing to do with me or this account. It has everything to do with you, Victoria countered. Because you're making the same mistake I did, believing he sees you as anything more than a means to an end. She moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. The proposal you found, it wasn't rejected. I convinced Jeremy to delay our decision because I discovered Kyle had only pursued me to secure Luminera's business. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving Megan alone with this final devastating revelation. She found Kyle waiting in her office, standing at the window with his back to the door. He turned when she entered, his expression guarded. Well, did we get the account? We did, Megan confirmed, setting her materials on the desk between them. No thanks to your manipulations. Kyle exhaled slowly. Megan, I need you to listen. No, she interrupted, anger finally breaking through her professional veneer. I need you to listen. Did you orchestrate our meeting at the crosswalk? Was that all part of your plan to win Luminera? Of course not, he said, looking genuinely startled by the accusation. That was completely coincidental. Then explain the file I found. Explain why Victoria believes you only dated her to secure her business. Explain why your handwritten notes specifically mentioned finding a fresh perspective to present to her. Kyle's shoulders sagged slightly as he sank into the chair across from her desk. I can see how this looks, he admitted. But it's not what you think, or what Victoria believes. Then what is it? 8 months ago, we presented a strong proposal to Luminera, he began, holding her gaze. Victoria seemed impressed, but suddenly withdrew from negotiations after she and I ended our relationship. At the time, I believed it was simply fallout from our personal situation. Megan crossed her arms. And when did you start dating Victoria? We met at a tech conference nearly a year and a half ago, Kyle said, before Luminera was ever on Catalyst's radar. The relationship progressed naturally, at least I thought it did. He rubbed his temples. When the engagement ended, Victoria accused me of using her to get to her business. It wasn't true, but she convinced Jeremy it was. And the note about finding a fresh perspective? Written after their rejection, yes, he acknowledged. But not as some manipulative scheme. Victoria is known for valuing diverse perspectives and innovative approaches. I realized our original team, mostly men, mostly veterans of the industry, hadn't connected with her vision for Luminera's future. Megan processed this explanation, searching his face for signs of deception. So hiring me was part of a strategy to win Luminera back? No, Kyle replied firmly. I hired you because your portfolio was exceptional and your interview with the board was impressive. The Luminera account wasn't even on the table when we made you the offer. He leaned forward. When you spilled that smoothie on your dress that morning, I genuinely didn't know who you were. I was just trying to help. And proposing drinks at Azure? Was that also just innocent helpfulness? A hint of his usual confidence returned. That was entirely selfish. I was attracted to you, both your boldness and your talent. The fact that you turned out to be my new head of brand strategy was complicated. Complicated, Megan repeated, the word laden with understatement. I'm not perfect, Megan, Kyle said quietly. I've made mistakes in my personal life, and Victoria has legitimate reasons to be hurt. But I never used you or manipulated you to win Luminera. Megan studied him, weighing his words against Victoria's accusations and her own instincts. Even if I believe you, this doesn't change the fact that we shouldn't be anything other than colleagues. Because of the power imbalance? He asked. Partly, she admitted. And partly because I've worked too hard to have my accomplishments attributed to anything other than my own abilities. I have a baby on the way. I can't afford to be seen as someone who slept her way into success. Kyle nodded slowly. I understand. He rose to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, what you did in that presentation today, completely reimagining our approach overnight, standing your ground with the Carters, that was all you, Megan. And it was remarkable. The sincerity in his voice made something warm unfurl in her chest, but she tamped it down. Thank you. Now, if you don't mind, I have a team to congratulate and a major new account to implement. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity as Megan led the Luminera launch. The campaign exceeded expectations, with early metrics showing significant growth in both bookings and social media engagement. Victoria Carter became one of Catalyst's most vocal advocates, opening doors to other luxury eco-resort clients. Throughout this period, Kyle maintained a respectful professional distance. Their interactions were cordial but limited, focused entirely on business matters. If others noticed the careful boundaries between them, no one mentioned it. By late fall, with Megan now visibly 7 months pregnant, her department had expanded to handle their growing client roster, and her position at Catalyst was unquestionably secure. The office whispers about her rapid rise had faded, replaced by genuine respect for her strategic vision and leadership. On the evening of the Luminera campaign's official quarterly review, a resounding success by every metric, Megan found herself alone in the office, savoring the quiet satisfaction of achievement while organizing files before her upcoming maternity leave. A knock at her door broke the silence. Kyle stood in the doorway, looking somewhat different than she remembered. More relaxed, perhaps, in dark jeans and a casual button-down shirt rather than his usual tailored suit. "Congratulations," he said. "The quarterly numbers are exceptional." "Thank you." Megan leaned back in her chair, one hand resting on her prominent belly where the baby was actively moving. The team really delivered. They had excellent leadership. He hesitated, then stepped fully into her office. "I have something to tell you. I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations at Catalyst." Surprise made Megan sit up straighter, as much as her pregnant belly would allow. "What? What?" "Several reasons," he replied, settling into the chair across from her. "Primarily, I'm launching an educational technology foundation that will require significant attention. But also," he met her eyes directly, "I've realized that my presence here creates complications for certain professional relationships that I value." Understanding dawned. "Kyle, you don't need to leave your company because of our situation." "I'm not leaving entirely," he clarified. "I'll remain on the board, but Carmen will be stepping up as CEO. The announcement goes out next week." Megan absorbed this unexpected development. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to hear it from me first." As he turned to leave, Megan found herself speaking without forethought. "Wait." When he paused, she continued. "Remember that morning at the crosswalk when I said something completely impulsive? I'm unlikely to forget it," he replied, amusement warming his voice. Megan stood, slowly, given her current state, and moved around her desk until only a few feet separated them. "What if I told you I'd like to try being impulsive again?" Kyle's expression shifted from surprise to cautious hope. "I'd say that sounds intriguing." "Have dinner with me," she said simply. "After the baby's born and I'm back on my feet. Not as my boss or the founder of Catalyst Digital. Just as Kyle, the man who once lent me his handkerchief when I needed it." He studied her face. "What changed your mind these past months?" "Watching you respect the boundaries I set," Megan explained. "Seeing how you empowered my team without interference. Learning that you're stepping back from your company partly because of your principles." She took a deep breath. "And maybe realizing that some complications are worth navigating, especially when both people are willing to put in the work." "Dinner, then," Kyle agreed, a genuine smile transforming his features. "Though I should warn you, if your goal is to eliminate power imbalances, you should know that you've held all the power since the moment you first told me to kiss you like I meant it." Megan laughed, the sound free and unrestrained in a way it hadn't been in months. "In that case, I have just one more impulsive suggestion." "I'm listening." She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Maybe we should find out if you can." This time, when Kyle's lips met hers, there were no interruptions. Only the surprising discovery that sometimes the most calculated risk is allowing oneself to follow an unexpected path. His kiss was both gentle and certain, the touch of someone who had waited patiently for something he truly valued. When they finally parted, Megan smiled up at him. "Worth the wait." "Absolutely," Kyle murmured, his hand coming to rest gently on her belly where the baby had just kicked. "Though I think we're just beginning." "We are," Megan agreed, thinking of the baby soon to arrive and this man who had somehow become essential to her life. "And that's exactly what I want." 6 months later, as Megan stood beside Kyle at the opening of his Educational Technology Foundation's first community center, she reflected on how thoroughly her life had transformed since that fateful morning at the crosswalk. Her career had flourished, with Catalyst's brand strategy department now recognized as an industry leader under her direction. Meanwhile, her relationship with Kyle had deepened into something neither of them had anticipated. A partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine connection. Their infant daughter, Emma, slept peacefully in a carrier against Kyle's chest, her tiny fist curled against his shirt. "Penny for your thoughts?" Kyle asked, his free hand warm against the small of her back. Megan leaned into his touch, watching families explore the new facility with delight. "I was just thinking about impulses and calculations," she replied. and how sometimes the best decisions look like mistakes at first glance. His smile, the real one with the dimple she'd first noticed that morning, appeared. "Speaking of impulses," he said, guiding her away from the crowded reception toward a quieter corner. "There's something I've been wanting to ask you." As Kyle carefully shifted Emma's carrier and took her hand in his, Megan realized that some questions, like some kisses, were worth waiting for, especially when they led to beginnings rather than endings. And whatever he asked next, her answer would be the easiest decision she'd ever made. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts and feelings about their love story. Until next time.